Hi, it's Robbie from Southern California, and today you're going to be watching the birds out my kitchen window here in Southern California during the 7 o'clock hour in the morning. You can compare and go back and look at the videos, and you'll get different angles. I hope to get this Wyze cam outside, but right now it's in my kitchen window, so it's going through the glass, and there's a glare. But you know what? It's really nice to get a different perspective on the feeders. So I've been going through the comments, and it's interesting. A lot of you from Michigan and back east are noticing that the hummingbirds are disappearing, though a lot of you are leaving out hummingbird feeders just in case. Few of you have asked, why'd they leave? The weather's not bad yet. Well, our weather, as you can see today, is 65 degrees and cloudy, and that brings in more birds. Why? Well, because the flowers may not be open yet. They may not be able to find as much food. Now, I have noticed that on cloudy days or rainy days, of course, they come in to feed more. But I think in the morning, they come to get their food, kind of like having your cup of coffee. Gets them some food into their system so they can get out and start their day. But as far as back east, with the weather still fairly good in many areas, but the hummingbirds disappearing, well, remember, a lot of these have a long trip to make. So they can't wait for the first snow because then they'll be in big trouble. Think of how tiny they are. They have many miles to go, and they need to find food every single day. So they have to leave very early before the season gets bad. Now, some of them will be staying in the United States and might go across and go into Texas. Other ones might head across the Gulf and go into Southern California and stay. And many others are going all the way down into Mexico and Central America. And so think of the trip they've got to make, and they've got to stay healthy during this trip and be fueled very well with food. So they have to analyze that the weather's good, it's not too hot, it's pretty good for them to take that long flight. And keep in mind, like I've talked about, they're doing this all on their own. They're not like your geese that get together and have a big flock and go across in the sky and there's a leader and somebody's following. There's no leader. It's all in their head. They know exactly where they are supposed to go. Now, they can end up somewhere, let's say Southern California, and they can analyze that maybe they don't have to go that far. Maybe there's enough water, there's enough shelter, there's enough food. They can do very well in the cold. We've gotten freezing cold, and the only thing we have to make sure is that they have enough food and it doesn't freeze. Now here, where I am, my feeders aren't going to freeze. So I don't have to worry about that. I keep them up against the house, and the house radiates some heat, and the birds like to hang on to the Christmas lights you see there. So in the rain or cold weather, they'll hang on those Christmas lights. Now, those lights are not really giving off much heat because of the type of light bulb it is, but it does give them shelter because, as you can see, they're under the eaves. They can get out of the rain, and they can huddle up against the house where it's warmer. The stucco stays warmer. So they can stay here in Southern California. They don't need the really warm weather. There are places, and I've seen the photos, that in the snow, as long as the feeders are thawed and they have food, they can survive the cold weather, just like a lot of other birds do. Their most important thing is water and food. They may not find as many insects, but if you got spiders and little things around, all they have to do is find the spider web, and they can find, at that point, insects to eat. So if they've got nectar and they've got some protein, they may not find enough pollen, but this will keep them going until the weather is better. Now, I've had some comments on what type of sugar I use. I actually use both. I use cane sugar and beet sugar. If you buy a bag of sugar, I've got videos on this, and it doesn't say cane sugar, then 99.9% chance it is beet sugar or sugar beet. Now, it is sucrose, so it really doesn't matter which one. As far as health, it doesn't matter if it's cane sugar or beet sugar. I prefer cane, but I do buy sugar that's on sale sometimes. That is probably beet sugar because all it says is white granulated sugar. As far as taste testing, which I did, I've got a whole video on that, they didn't know the difference. There was actually some that preferred the beet sugar, and there were some that preferred the cane sugar. Beet sugar has a little bit more of a caramely taste, And then cane sugar is just real sweet. So it's going to be a taste preference. And then, of course, the birds won't mind because think about it. They're going from flower to flower. Well, flowers aren't going to taste the same, right? So that's why they'll go to one and to the other. If you're having an issue and you think it is the beet sugar, then go ahead and change and see how it works out. I know there's been a few people that were putting out food and they could not get any of the hummingbirds. By the way, these are dots that I am refilling, and that's a peanut butter cup on the bottom. Sometimes they don't like the pre-made sugar nectar that you can buy in the store. You have to try it. If they're not coming to it and you see hummingbirds around, there's nothing wrong with making your own. Same thing, there's nothing wrong buying it. But if they're not going to use it, then you're spending a lot of money, and it's a whole lot more money than making it on your own, on something they may not feed on. Or they've been foraging around at other people's houses, because that's what they'll do. And if they prefer the granulated sugar, homemade nectar, then they may not feed on the store-bought. If you read the store-bought, they're all different. Some of them have preservatives, some of them have dye. So they may taste something in there that they don't like. Just like you know when you're going to a restaurant what kind of hamburger you want if you're not a vegan, and you know which one you like better. Well, they're the same thing. They know. And sometimes some people have told me, well, wait a minute. Why does the person down the block have a lot of hummingbirds and I don't? Well, they may be consistent, and that is a big thing. Consistency. You cannot let your feeders run dry, and you can't let your feeders go bad. If the sugar turns, doesn't taste good, something's wrong with it, they're going to leave, and they won't drink from it. If it runs out, of course, there's nothing there to drink. And if they find a place, somebody else putting out sugar water for them, and there's always fresh sugar water, they're going to stay where the supply is good. So once they move on and find a good supply, sometimes it takes time to get them to come back. That's why I have to make sure all these feeders are full. Now, some of them may run out. You've seen them here. They'll drink it out. They'll find a favorite feeder and they'll drink from that. And I have to make sure that when I catch it, I clean it out, because there's certain birds that like certain feeders and certain seats, kind of like you go to a restaurant and you want to sit in a certain booth on a certain seat, and if somebody's in your seat at that booth, you're going to wait. Well, they do the same thing sometimes too. They won't starve. They will go somewhere else and sit at another feeder, but they do have preferences just like us. So that's the main thing, is if you've had them and you've noticed they disappeared, make sure you keep those feeders well fed. See, I'm constantly doing this. Early in the morning, I get up, I look at them, and if I can wait, I'll have my cup of coffee first, and then I'll go, because I need to energize to do all this, and then I'll go do the feeders. Now, if the feeders have been emptied and they got up earlier and really emptied a lot, then I will do them right away. I have to make sure that more than half of these feeders have food. I prefer to not leave empty ones, but it gets past me too, just like anybody else. Now, some of you have asked if I go on vacation. No, I haven't been on a real vacation in probably a good 25 years. Even when Gary's brother and sister-in-law came out just a couple years ago, we could only do day things because, yes, this is demanding, but it's been my lifestyle for some time. But I do hope to change that at some point, at least to be able to get away for one day. Now, a few of you have asked how I clean my hummingbird feeders using baking soda. It's basically with a toothbrush. I'll have to show it one day. And I keep a baking soda in a salt shaker. So I kind of shake it onto the toothbrush, and then I can scrub the inside of my feeders. My feeders have a really wide opening. So it's easy to get a brush in there, a bottle brush or a toothbrush, scrub everything, including the bottom part that's red, where they're feeding through, with baking soda. A lot of cooks and chefs use baking soda to clean their baking pans, because this way there's no soapy residue left, and it works really good. Well, I'll get to some more questions soon. We'll do this again. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye.